Good evening. This is Mike Rogers and Rick Olson with Granite Grok, and we're here tonight with Matt Schlapp, the president of the American Conservative Union, the cheerleader and champion of CPAC every year, and just gave a barnstorming speech at the Nashua Republican Stakeout tonight.
And it was a good steak.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't.
I'm not used to that.
No, it was a good steak. It was not a rubber chicken.
No.
Okay, so, aside from the speech, you're right. If Republicans would do what they ran on, if this was really the party of small government, it would be terrific. Your points were very well made. And, Trump's human. He may be flawed. He's a guy from Brooklyn. He acts and talks like a guy from Brooklyn. But you know what? He's got a vision. It may not be Reagan-esque, but the results are Reagan-esque.
Yeah, so I didn't go into all the details in the speech, but I have to correct you and say Trump is from Queens. My mother's from Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
There's a little rivalry in these things.
Yeah.
But if you really think about if someone gives a Republican speech, they're going to say we need to overturn Roe v. Wade. They're going to say we're going to uphold traditional marriage. They're going to say we need to balance the budget. They're going to say we need to put a padlock on the front door of the IRS and put it out of business. And we can think of all the other things that they would say we're going to get rid of ISIS, right? We would say these things, and after a while, as I said, I turned 50. It was one of these moments where I thought, wait a minute, we've been saying we're going to overturn Roe v. Wade since 1973. I mean, after a while, if you're a pro-life voter out there, you got to ask yourself, well, why don't they do that? And it's hard to do, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's easy to do, but my theory is, having worked for a lot of Republicans, is there's a lot of them who have absolutely no intention of doing that. And I don't mean pro-choice Republicans, I mean pro-life Republicans who have no intention of doing that.
They don't want to lose enough of their voters to lose the next election. And
or maybe they don't even agree with the policy. Maybe it scares them.
Yeah.
You know what Donald Trump did? This was the most unique thing I've seen in politics in a really long time. He did something that no other Republican president I've seen give this answer. They said, well, if you're going to overturn Roe v. Wade, what's going to happen? And he says, I guess it goes back to the states. And no Republican has had the courage to say that because it's scary to people. Well, wait a minute. What if it changes the way things are done? What if there are no abortion providers in my state? Well, that's what being pro-life means. It means that you don't want to have an abortion provider in your state. It means that the state gets to decide. And these are really not that radical, and we've actually been saying them for a long time, and he is just a plain-spoken person that says, okay, well, that means this is what happens. And I find it wonderful.
It's 45 years, as you say, 1973, Roe v. Wade. The whole thing, Emanations from Penumbras, was a very flawed piece of judicial reasoning, and part of the problem is presidents, Democrat and Republican alike, have nominated moderate to left justices. I mean,
on purpose.
In some cases to get an easy passage, in some cases because they were kind of squishy moderate themselves, like H.W. Here in New Hampshire, David Souter, when he voted the wrong way on Kelo, there was a movement to declare his house a historic monument and take it.
I would have been for that.
And take it under eminent domain.
And David Souter, one of the worst things about him is he lacked honor. It was one thing to lie to President Bush and to be a big liberal when he acted like he wasn't. But I think it was particularly galling that he retired and let Obama pick his replacement. I don't think there's any honor with him. You have to remember, these justices spend some real time with the presidents. And I think John Roberts lied to George W. Bush, and it's really appalling. And they make such a difference. I didn't say it in my speech, but I know Neil Gorsuch and I know Brett Kavanaugh really well. These two gentlemen, with the other conservatives on the court, they might save our country.
What other president would stand before the people and say, I have a list of justices from an impeccable conservative source, and I'm going to use them.
I love it. I wrote an article about this. I said, to Trump, back then Trump, now Mr. President, it was about, if someone said to him, we want to build a building over here, but it's a brownfield and you can't do it, and the neighbors are opposed, and the zoning committee won't do it, what Trump would have said is, Well, who's opposed? Well, why are they opposed? Let's go talk to them. Let's bring them in here. We'll go to dinner. And he would start about doing it. So I think people said to him, you're never going to get this nomination. No one knows if you're pro-life. What do you mean no one knows if I'm pro-life? What do they want? Well, they want to see the Supreme Court go back to constitutional norms. Oh, they do? Well, what does that mean? Well, they want the names that they're names that they like. Oh, well, I'm for those names too. Why don't we just put them down on a piece of paper and I'll make a pledge that I'll pick one. I mean, it's really not that hard. No. But it's revolutionary because you know what it means? It means that he was signaling that he was going to be bound by what he said. Where everyone else kind of has that exit clause. It's like, what did the last couple of nominees say? I want to pick people like Thomas and Scalia. Well, I call BS. Yeah. Because when they're going to get their opportunity, were they really going to do that? So it's refreshing.
Who seated Scalia? How long?
Reagan.
Right.
Reagan. By the way, half of Reagan's picks were unsteady.
I know.
So it's been a rough go for us.
It has indeed. And Clarence Thomas has turned out to be the star justice of them all. He should be the Chief Justice.
Yes, that's right.
The clearest, most lucid, and most constitutional opinions, bar none.
Yes, and I also think what makes Clarence Thomas wonderful is he does the full scale. He's a brilliant intellectual who's a regular dude. If you ever get a chance to talk to him, you'll be blown away by the fact that he lives when he and his wife decide to go on vacation, they fire up the Winnebago and they head over to flyover country and they go visit with regular folks. They are as unaffected as any people you'll ever see inside the swamp. Yet he's a brilliant person that's upholding this.
And they hate his wife because she has her own voice and it's conservative too.
She's wonderful.
Yeah. So Rick, you got any questions?
Yeah,
I could always follow on, but keep going.
Sure. One of the things I focus my writing on with Granite Rock is advocacy for Second Amendment issues, and I talk about different cases at different times when they
You said the Second Amendment, right?
Second Amendment.
So that means it's like right after the first.
Right after the first.
It's not at the tail end.
Not at the
They put
tail
it right
end.
at the beginning. I just think that's important to constantly.
We have the First Amendment for free speech and the Second to protect it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's not tail end Charlie in a little glass bubble that nobody thinks about.
That's exactly right.
How do you see the trend going in terms of the justices that are being selected? Is our Second Amendment safer now?
I think the Second Amendment is more vulnerable than it's ever been.
I do too.
I think that the president is picking the most solid nominees that have ever been put on the court. More solid than Reagan, more solid than Bush 43, because he is cutting less deals with senators because he doesn't need to cut as many deals.
Right.
Because he can just get a simple majority. Whereas with President Bush, he was always trying to get to that super majority number. So you're out there trying to cut something to make the Democrats go along with at least a certain number, which is what we talked about earlier. Even on the Supreme Court, one of the great things Trump has going for him is the fact he just needs 50 votes. He just needs Republican votes, doesn't need a Democratic vote. It's going to make a big impact on the Second Amendment, but I think from a PR, society, culture standpoint, I think it's under great risk. I think it's breathtaking. Look, this is a civil right. It's breathtaking to hear people talk about it as if it's dog meat, and that's got to change. And I think it's got to change by us all understanding why we are losing people on this basic question of the Bill of Rights and really engaging them and making them understand why it's so important. I mean, it just takes one terrible act of violence in a family for people to understand why it's important to be able to protect yourself. And I don't think we need to exploit those situations, but we need to make sure people understand that what stops a bad man with a gun, a good American with a gun, and it happens all the time.
I think that comment about the school shootings and it being a homicide-friendly zone. I thought that was a very good comment earlier.
Yeah, it's the most dangerous thing, and the president has said that. It's another thing that he has said. The most dangerous thing is when they put the handgun on the sticker with the arrow through it. You're basically telling a shooter, come on in.
Well, I loved when James O'Keefe went to the legislators and the newspaper man in New York State and said, so you're anti-gun. Are you willing to put a sign on your front lawn that says this is a gun-free zone? It's like, hell no, we're not sending that message.
It's akin to immigration. How many of these people that believe in open borders don't have locks on their doors? My guess is it's zero.
Yeah.
There's just certain common sense in life, and there's a common sense of understanding that you have your own responsibility on personal security. Look, the thin blue line, the cops are great, but you know what? for a lot of us, it would take them a while to get to your house if something were to happen. It's not their fault. It's just distance, and the fact that you're not always at the top of the line when you make a 911 call.
I was a law enforcement officer at a place.
This is true, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was a law enforcement officer at a place where it took 44 minutes to get to a home.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, if a bad guy comes in with a gun, it's too late.
Yep.
He would have done everything he ever could have wanted to do.
Sure.
And it's a sobering thing to think about. I don't mean to be fear-mongering, but we have a responsibility ourselves. And look, if you never want to own a gun, great, don't own it. But you better hope your neighbor does. And that's really what happens in America.
You better be real cognizant of security around the home too.
That's right. Yeah, you ought to be real careful. And who has your key and everything else. Yeah. That's right.
Well, I was going somewhere else on the judges. So you said something about halfway through the speech about the federal judges. You said a federal judge over here can say you must do this, and a federal judge over there can say, Mr. President, you can't do that. And in fact, both of them are wrong. And in a recent ruling, Clarence Thomas made it very clear that this ability for a single federal judge in one courthouse out of hundreds having the ability to make national law is wrong and is in fact not constitutional. And he says if this continues to happen, we need to revisit it and shut it down. I'm paraphrasing here, but he practically said that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes people, Mark Levin's talking about having a constitution of the states, which we agree with at the ACU, and one of the things they're talking about is maybe we should limit the tenure of these justices and judges because they feel so independent that they actually end up breaking the law, making new law, which is the same thing as breaking the spirit of the
They're
Constitution.
supposed to be independent of political pressure and faithful to the Constitution.
Yes.
The problem is not the lifetime tenure, but the poor picks, I think.
Poor picks, but also there's got to be some kind of procedure to really root out people who are just. I mean, maybe it's impeachment. Impeachment is usually, like they say, high crimes and misdemeanors. But if you're not following the Constitution that you took an oath to uphold, maybe they should be able to do something to take you out.
Well, thinking of impeachments and high crimes and misdemeanors, let me remind you of one judge who was impeached.
Yes, Alcee Hastings.
Exactly the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Who was then
elected to Congress.
Elected to Congress. Or Marion Berry, who got re-elected after being busted with hookers and cocaine.
Look, I'm passionate about this, but I am a social conservative. That being said, and I said this in my remarks, what the federal bench is doing now, there's a lot of conservatives and Republicans who think that, I might be pro-choice, or maybe I'm fine with, more libertarian view on social issues. That's not the threat from the courts. The threat from the courts is kilo. The threat from the courts is they can take your property. They can allow people to take your property. They can allow people to confiscate your guns because the Obama administration said, well, you're too old and enfeebled to take care of paying your bills, so we can come in and round up all your guns. Which is, by the way, if you're an older person who's having a little trouble with all the little details of life, the last thing you want to do to that person is take away their personal security because they're already vulnerable. They're not as spry as they used to be. So, these types of questions, this is where they're going. And if you're an entrepreneur in this country, if you're a small business person in this country, these administrative agencies are able to just screw around with you. They're able to run you out of business. What the special counsel is doing to Donald Trump, they can do the guy who owns a dry cleaner. Yeah. And there has to be constitutional protections and limits to what a prosecutor in an independent agency can do. There has to be.
Which is why you need better justices, because the kind of votes Kelo was one that was so bad it actually prompted a number of otherwise moderate states to enact their own protections.
Yes, that's right.
Which I thought was excellent, and the Second Amendment issues, but also the inversion of the meaning and intent of the Commerce Clause by this ability for North Dakota to collect taxes in other states.
They got that wrong.
The internet sales tax?
Yeah.
I have a different view. My view is this on that, which is if you were to have a prohibition on internet sales taxes, I would like that better, but what we have now is some people have to collect it and some people can't collect it. So that's where it gets screwy. So if you're a brick and mortar business, you actually have to collect all those online taxes. If you're simply an internet company, you don't. And so they're competing for the same customer online. One is paying the sales taxes, having to collect it, one isn't. And I think where the justices were coming from is you have to kind of pick a lane, Congress. If you're going to have a tax, you have to apply it evenly. You can't apply it unevenly.
Well, but I would counter with the responsibility is on the state that is imposing the tax to figure out how to collect it.
That's right.
And you can't tell another state to collect it for you. And furthermore, if I buy a microwave oven in another state that is tax-free and I drive across the border into one that isn't, like Massachusetts, effectively, if I'm honest, I say to Massachusetts, I just bought this and I owe you $15 in sales taxes, but I don't do it because nobody does it, including state legislators who buy their beer in New Hampshire and drive over the border in their state legislator plated car. We have recordings of that stuff.
Well, this is my view on this is the following, which is I'm not a libertarian, although I'm libertarian leaning, and I think a lot of libertarians look at these tax orders and say, I'm okay with it being uneven because it shows how silly government is, and maybe it'll lead to a tax revolt to say we shouldn't have any of these taxes. I don't operate in that world because I'm more of a practical person. I've been in business. It's great theoretically to say, okay, one guy has to collect a tax and another guy doesn't, and that creates chaos. But if you're the guy who has to collect it and there's nothing you can do to get from under that tax, you will lose in that competition every day of the week. So what we're essentially doing is the government's picking winners and losers on taxes and regulation. To me, that's like an earmark, and I hate that. Look, I hate taxes. I'd like to make them as low as possible. I think the way we get there is to make everyone have to pay them and get those rates as low as possible. And by the way, if everyone pays the taxes, then we have a bigger movement to say the tax should be lower. So if there was, if I would agree with you if it was just about what states could do, but because it's uneven in the types of businesses and businesses already have to collect them, then I feel differently. This could be my car service. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Then I better.
There's a lot of dinging and ringing going on.
We better let you take it. So, yeah, my point's a little different, which is that the Commerce Clause was there to specifically prevent the states from taxing each other, and the Commerce Department was to make interstate commerce regular, i.e. to make it, regulate it by making it regular to prevent them from taxing each other. And furthermore, what may be bad for competition for a small brick and mortar business in a high tax state is impossible for a small business in a no tax state that then has to figure out how many percent to charge on stuff that they're sending to different towns, cities, states. We want to sell, as the blog, we want to sell stuff.
Well, I think we're saying maybe a similar thing. You're saying the Commerce Clause has been used to set federal policies, right, and have it used to push through to the states and to reduce the ability of the states to determine their own tax policy and other policies.
Well, I would say that too. The Commerce Clause has been used to impose
almost everything,
things on the states which were absolutely never intended by any part of the Constitution.
That's right.
But my other point about the Commerce Clause is it's intended to prevent the states from taxing each other.
Yeah, I get that.
And
so my point would be this, which is if they're allowing it to happen today, even before that Supreme Court decision, that was already happening, where states were collecting the taxes from other states. I would be for nobody being able to do that. What I'm not for is the marble cake of some people fall into the trap of the tax and other people don't. I think that's one of the most pernicious things about government. I'm a more practical conservative and less a theoretical conservative. I think about the two people in business who are competing with each other when they're in the same state and it's a regulation or tax that's the difference maker in their ability to set the price and get the customer. That makes me angry. I don't think the government should play that role.
I'm with you on that.
See, we agree.
I think we do. Rick, you got a last question, and we got to let Matt go.
I think we're good. Matt Schlapp, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for talking with Granite Grok.
Come to CPAC. Everyone come to CPAC.
I want to come to
Last 2 days of February, first 2 days of March. President's coming. The Vice President's coming.
We'll get there if we can.
That's awesome.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
We'll take care of you with your interview needs too.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Everyone's there.
Grok TV.